M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A. Gotta love millennials.
Good day and welcome to our new segment, Millennial Musings, where we're basically just a couple people talking about relevant topics from a younger person's perspective, and it's completely unscripted, and we're basically just sharing what's on the top of our heads. We're just wanting to do this to give you an idea of what it's like being in the head of a younger person in today's society. So, Neray, do you want to introduce our first topic?
Yes. Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Neray and this is Mathew. So we're going to share a topic today on justice and mercy.
Okay, so this was your idea for this first topic, so why don't you start us off?
Okay, so justice. What is justice, Mathew?
Depends who you ask. I'm a fan of Plato, and he spent an entire dialogue trying to figure that out, the Euthyphro dilemma. And I think by the end, his one character, Socrates, basically just pulled apart every theory about what justice actually was. Because that was back in ancient Greece, so we have slightly different ideas today. Okay, well, what do you think justice is?
Well, like I say, justice is such a broad word. You know, there's so many definitions around justice and what people interpret to be justice. So one aspect of justice is social justice. What does social justice actually mean? What do you think?
I guess to me, social justice would mean, my definition of justice, or the way I understand it, is all things being fair and equal. Doing that which is right, that which is best.
Yeah.
A lot of people have often seen justice as being punitive, as being punishment. They consider justice, in their minds, mercy and justice are two topics. They are polar opposites. You get justice on the one side, you know, getting punished, getting what you deserve. That's justice to them. And mercy is having that punishment delayed or put off. But to me, I think mercy and justice are almost the same thing. They're supposed to work together, because justice isn't getting punished. Justice is getting to where you're supposed to be. It's fair. That's why we always have the idea of scales. Justice is a pair of scales where it's equal on both sides. So to me, social justice would be addressing inequality and making it equal.
Okay, so it's a matter of corrective measures.
Yeah.
So if something was unfair or not equal, justice will bring that up to a corrective measure to equal standard. Is that what you mean?
Yes, more or less. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So making everything equal, basically.
Yeah. So mercy. Mercy also has a lot of interpretations. Mercy on the one hand is said to be grace. And grace for something that was wrong. And the other side of mercy is to not punish to the full extent. So how would you describe mercy from your side?
Growing up in church, the definitions that were often put forward was justice is getting what you deserve.
Yes.
Okay. Whether that is punishment or reward. Justice is getting what you deserve. Mercy is not getting what you deserve, with the idea of the negative side. And then grace is getting something that you do not deserve. So getting more.
Okay.
So let's say, let's take the Christian perspective now. I have sinned grievously. I have sinned against God and against man. I deserve to be punished. Okay. So justice in that side would be I deserve not being separated from God. That would be justice, me being separated from God because I have sinned. Mercy is God not punishing me. Mercy is God staying his hand from actually meting out punishment. Grace is, even though I do not deserve what I'm getting, grace is even more than that. Grace is giving me Christ. Grace is giving me salvation. Grace is giving me eternal life in bliss and in paradise, being with God. So that's my understanding, having grown up in church, of what mercy and grace is. That mercy is, you are no worse off than you were before. Grace is you are now even more than you were before. You are better off than you were before.
Yeah. Wow, that is an amazing way to look at it. And the thing is, we have relationships with so many different people, and then we have a relationship with God. So that relationship with God is working out how you feel about yourself, about what you have committed, and the sins that you committed, and the guilt that you have, and working that relationship out with God, and finding that perspective, like you have described. Then you have a relationship with your neighbor. Love thy neighbor. And depending on which side you are, if somebody has done something to you, or if you have done something to somebody, so those perspectives as well. So if somebody has wronged you, what is justice and mercy, and how does that picture look like?
Okay, well, that's very interesting, because you often see people's perspective on these things change depending on which side of that interaction they're on. So let's say I have wronged you now, and I know I have wronged you. I would hope for mercy from you. Okay, I would hope that you would not seek restitution. Whereas if you had wronged me, I would like to be seeking justice. Okay, I would likely be seeking restitution and so on. So yeah, it depends on the perspective, obviously, often. But I think that's part of the problem with a lot of people these days, and especially in modern day times with a lot of people online and so on. There's this whole thing called cancel culture. That the very moment somebody says something small, doesn't matter what they've done in the past, doesn't matter how amazing a person they've been, they make one mistake. They have made one mistake in the past. They get dredged up. They're cancelled. That's it. They are no longer good. Their name is dragged through the mud. They can have no say anymore because let's say they made one offhand comment in private 15 years ago. They are now labeled as a bigot and should not be considered for anything.
So hello, we just took a break because Mathew's chair was creaking and we needed to change one. So here we are. So we were talking about cancel culture, and now from cancel culture, the social media has created such a big thing of you can just say what you want and you can cancel somebody's opinion out and whoever and whatever they've done. So let's pick up from that.
Okay. So what I was saying was, yes, so cancel culture, it comes from this idea, this false idea that we seem to have, that justice is all about punishment. And it's an idea that we've had for a very long time, unfortunately. And we can see it in our prison systems especially. So if we take a look at the American prison system, is incredibly punitive. It's very much about punishing wrongdoers. Okay, that's the focus. And then we look at the Swedish perspective, the Swedish model. It's more about rehabilitation. So the American prison system, which focuses on punishment, they focus on you are going to prison because you've done something wrong. We look at the cycle there. The statistics seem to say that about 70% of American prisoners will be prisoners again. They will be released, they will be back. 70% that have been to prison will go to prison again. As opposed to the Swedish model, which focuses more on rehabilitation, focuses more on, okay, what have you done, what mistakes have you made in life that have gotten you to this point, and how can we change that? The focus there being on rehabilitation, the statistics say only about 40% of prisoners will become prisoners again.
So what you're saying is they work on the root cause of the problem and rehabilitating and having corrective measures. Corrective being a strange word in that regard, because a person changes but will be able to be back into community and be an active citizen and contribute towards. Right. So having somebody to have that self-awareness to actually be able to go back into the community as a citizen of a community, a respected citizen.
Right.
Where where you say different prison systems where that does not happen, that corrective measure didn't take place, and that's then their identity. I am this person, I break in, I do crimes, and if I go back into the community, that is who I will be.
Exactly, exactly. And we can see that displayed quite nicely in the novel Les Miserables, for example, where what happens is it starts off with Jean Valjean. He's in prison, and he's in prison for something super small. He stole a loaf of bread because his niece was hungry and they didn't have any food. His niece was starving, they needed food, so he stole a loaf of bread. He gets caught. And he goes to prison. From the moment you go to prison, you are a convict then for the rest of your life. You are labeled. That is what you are. That is who you are. They're a yellow jacket because they all get this yellow jacket that they're supposed to wear, and they're identified from that moment forward as a convict. So that's it. His life is over. He can't get a job. He can't have a normal family life. He can't have people love him and care for him because he's a convict.
Sure.
That becomes his entire identity.
Yeah.
And we see he turns his life around after prison. He finds God. He finds this priest who puts him on the right path. He turns things around. He creates a new persona for himself, Monsieur Madeleine or something. And he actually gets elected as a mayor of this town. He turns the life of the town around. He revitalizes it. He brings it up. Everybody is living a life of happiness and wealth and prosperity because they don't know who he is. But the moment they all find out that he is actually an ex-convict named Jean Valjean, that's it. Everybody turns on him. They don't care anymore. They only see a convict. They don't see Monsieur Madeleine, the amazing mayor who loved everybody, who was so generous, who cared for everybody. They don't see him anymore. They just see an ex-convict named Jean Valjean because that's what his identity is.
So that's actually, we get back to cancel culture then,
Yeah.
you know, because they cancel that person out because of something that happened in their past. Sure, you know, that's a big thing, and I think it is a cultural movement at this point, is that's what's happening. So let's look at the other side of the coin then. People who cancel other people out, why does that happen? Is it because something has happened to them and that is now their outlook out of life, or is it just because everybody does it, so we all do it?
Well, I would say it's because it's easy. See, especially all of this cancel culture, all of this stuff, it all happens on the internet now. And as long as you're on the internet, you're anonymous. So you can anonymously push out hatred and venom and vitriol. And it's easy to be angry. It's easy to have unforgiveness. It's difficult to forgive. It's difficult to have mercy. It's easy to want to punish. And it's especially easy if you're anonymous while you're doing it.
So I think that's the whole thing about when something happens to us, if somebody did something wrong to us, how do we deal with that process? What is the justice? What is really justice for us behind it? Is it revenge? Does that really bring us justice? Or does the whole process of moving through what happened to us, grieving that process, and move through the cycle of grieving, and then break the chains through forgiveness?
Okay, well, looking at it from that perspective now, looking at it from the perspective of someone who has actually been harmed, because right now we're very much talking about the intellectual distance idea of, you know what, you should want to forgive, you should want to be merciful. It's easy to say that when you yourself haven't actually been wronged. It's difficult to say that when you are on the receiving end of the harm. So to look at this, I'll just use the story of my wife now. A couple of years ago, my wife's grandparents were murdered. They were two of the farm murders that happened, that have been happening and are still happening. But they were murdered. They were murdered in their beds. They had a little farm up in Bonnievale, and a guy wandered in one day with an axe, chopped them up in their beds. And it broke Liz. It broke my wife, obviously, because she was incredibly close to her grandparents, and this was completely senseless, completely random. It happened. 1 minute they were there, the next they were gone. And how did she deal with that? And I will say that I still am amazed at the maturity that she was able to give through all of this, that she had to make a choice there. Did she want to obsess with finding justice for this guy, that he must get caught, he must go to jail, he must get the death penalty, he must be punished and be locked away for the rest of his life? Did she want to focus on that? Or did she want to focus on healing and getting her own heart right in the sense of she loved her grandparents. It's not about this man being brought to justice. It's about the fact that she's lost her grandparents that she loved. And she had to make that choice of holding on to all of the venom towards this guy and having that poison the memory of her grandparents. Or did she want to say, you know what? It's not up to me. I'm going to focus on remembering my grandparents, remembering who they were, the happy times with them, and healing from that as well. So she made a choice between anger and sadness, basically. But the sadness that she chose is bittersweet because it's got that silver lining of happiness in it, that she gets to remember her grandparents. She doesn't focus on this horrendous thing that happened. She focused on the life that they lived, the amazing people they were, and the impact that they had on her life. And she instead, obviously she wants that man brought to justice, and he was caught. Obviously she desired that, but she didn't focus on that. She doesn't focus on how long is he going to jail, when is he, what's he doing, what's happening to him right now. She doesn't focus on him. She doesn't focus on all of that. In fact, she would like him to be able to consider what he did, those people that he killed. Ask himself, why did he do it? And, learn from it, grow from it, become a better person. So that's an incredibly difficult decision to make. Yes. Like we were saying, it's easy to want to punish. It's easy to want to hold on to unforgiveness. It's difficult to show mercy. It's difficult to choose forgiveness, which is why so few people do it. You need to be an incredibly strong person in character and in personality to be able to say, I forgive you. You've chopped up my grandparents, but I forgive you. I'm not going to hold on to that venom. So yeah, that's unfortunately where we are right now. It's easy to want to punish when you're anonymous on the internet, instead of giving people the benefit of the doubt, instead of saying, what if I was in this person's shoes? Because that's the other thing we do, that, yeah, I did wrong to you, please forgive me. You did wrong to me. Ooh, hellfire, hellfire.
So there's no empathy.
Yeah, yes.
Very little empathy in our society is understanding what another person is going through. And so the whole idea of identity, again, we come back to identity, of being an individual. I don't care about you, I just care about myself. That whole process. But coming back to what you're talking now about your wife, and you're saying that it takes an incredible, strong person to be able to move through it and with grace, and being able to be resilient and build your own life back up, and having that desire for justice, but not having revenge or focusing on that and obsessing about it, instead of taking the whole package on and saying, this is what happened. I know that this is what I'm feeling. I acknowledge that part, that I want justice. I acknowledge and I understand this is what I'm feeling. And even express that in a safe environment with people that you trust and you love, to say that this is what I'm feeling. I want to get to this guy, and I want to make sure that he understands how I'm feeling. But having that whole process of going through grief and going through cycles of, and understanding the emotions, what we're feeling. I think it goes not only when somebody is going through grief itself, because loss and change, remember, this is our daily thing right now. We go through change and loss every single day as a society, as individuals. But just in general life, to understand and have self-awareness of who we are and what we are experiencing in our society right now, our own environment, and acknowledging all of that, it also helps us move forward and have empathy with others if we have love for ourselves and love for our neighbor. But we need to understand where we are at in order to relate to our society and people around us. So bringing all of that back, so justice and mercy, like you said at the beginning, there's a very thin line between the two, if there is even a line between it, because
Almost the same thing.
it's almost the same thing. It's like having that forgiveness, and forgiveness in itself, the word forgiveness is also, there's so many interpretations of what is forgiveness, what is the action behind forgiveness, and cutting a chain that's around you, that focus or obsession that you have with justice and revenge, is to cut that chain and break it off so that you can move forward. That whole process in itself is a little bit of part of forgiveness, I suppose.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away what happened, but it takes it helps you shape your direction in where you want to go.
Well, if I could just quickly, thought just popped in my mind, the ability to forgive yourself is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
And part of the cancel culture, part of this looking for flaws in other people all of the time, could it not then be related to the fact that people can't forgive themselves? So they're trying to focus on faults in other people in order to distract them. So I look at this person and look how awful he is. That makes me feel better about myself and all the horrible things I do.
Yes, true. I think definitely that's part of it, because if somebody is focusing on somebody else's problems, then they don't have to focus on their own, and then they also compare the two by saying, this is much worse than who I am, so I'm not that bad. I'm okay. But instead of focusing on another person's problems and trying to fix that, or condemning that, rather than to sit and to actually experience your own life and to understand what is going on in your own life. Because when you understand yourself, you can have empathy with others. But the internet, like you say, it's so easy to do it. People forget about that process altogether.
On that note, we should probably stop now.
I think so.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this first discussion that we had. It was a bit longer, but unfortunately the video cut out at some point and we had to go back. So living and learning is our first time.
It's our first time, but there will be more. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Millennial.